So hi everybody, I'm Sarah Crazley. And because we're not together physically in the same place as we intended to be, I wanted to start with a place that's very dear to me. So I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania in the 1980s. So I pretty much grew up in that Billy Joel song that we all know when the word Allentown comes up. And the image that you see on the right is the field where I used to play as a little girl. And I used to look up in the trees and see the tops of those buildings and really wonder what was going on in there. Was that a whole other city with people doing fascinating things? And over time, I learned that those were abandoned factories that really used to hold textile production and sewn goods production in my hometown and through a big part of the US. Now, you know, manufacturing went overseas in the 1990s. It's interesting, if you look at a tag inside your clothes for something that was made before the 90s, you'll likely see made in the USA. Because of those trade deals, what's happened to the industry here is that the talent pipeline has dried up. We don't have a new generation that's really excited to come in and work in manufacturing settings. And this really came to a head recently where we just didn't have enough people to produce domestic PPE when COVID-19 hit. Now, we talk a lot about jump-starting manufacturing and reshoring manufacturing back to the US. And in the apparel sector, we've been talking about that for a long time. But it's actually a really right-timed opportunity right now because of the convergence of a few things. So first, because of the pandemic, brands, they just want shorter supply chains. They want production much closer to where people are buying their clothes. So they're more interested in switching up their manufacturing partners. PPE production is still a big need and it's going to continue to be a big need, unfortunately. And there's also a really other exciting trend, which is more semi-automated machines and more close to fully automated machines are being commercialized that could actually make it cost effective to manufacture clothes domestically. This hasn't been the case just because US workers cannot compete with labor rates in parts of the world. So what we realized is that there's a real opportunity here. There's a real opportunity to upskill and reskill the 35 million unemployed and underemployed Americans who are sitting at home right now, who need to reskill and retrain because the job they had back in February no longer exists. And we know that this is an opportunity where we could build a workforce that would really allow us to reshore manufacturing. So we are proposing a new mobile application in Shimmy's portfolio called Herald. And what Herald does is it basically teaches people through video games the dexterity and hand-eye coordination they need to be successful in a manufacturing job. And then beyond that, it connects them to factories who need more folks to come in and do the work. We think we're the right company to do this because for the last 3 years, we've been building video games to reach, teach, and excite factory workers. So our core competencies have put us mostly in Asian factories, very large yield, in Bangladesh and Indonesia, and we're really excited to turn our attention to the US market and see what we can do to bring more workers into the talent pipeline. We also have the team to do it. So little did I know as a little girl when I was staring up at those abandoned factories, it would lead into a 15-year career in digital transformation across manufacturing segments. Prior to this company, I worked at Autodesk, and the folks that I brought together are a really tenacious group of people who have expertise in supply chain, in the apparel production, in mechanical engineering, and in user interface and game design. We also have pretty great traction. We've funded only through non-dilutive capital. We have partners as big as the UN and as little as some niche partners I'll talk about before. We're a part of some exciting manufacturing consortia like the Advanced Robotics and FOA consortia here in the US, as well as internationally through the World Economics Task Force on Advanced Manufacturing. And lastly, we participated in some pretty cool accelerators, not to mention especially the Scale Challenge, which has just been a wonderful boon to Shimmy's growth. We see this as a sizable market size. So we know that the job needs here in the US are around 300,000 workers, and we think that there's a total TAM of about 900 million, and we can service that need, making a pretty great business of 45 million a year in SaaS revenue. We're also set up to scale. So we already have agreements from networks of sewn trades practitioners, from the New York City Economic Development Corporation, and workforce boards that have access to unemployed Americans. So we're really looking to get some investment to build this tool and move it through this pipeline that we've already established. Our goals are getting 500 people working on Herald by Q3 2021. And then beyond that, 10xing it to 5,000. So we have workers trained in about 60 days and in jobs in early 2022. As I mentioned before, we already have interest. One partner is even in Northwest Arkansas. So we would love to help bolster the sewing school that's there with Marshallese women. Because our applications are multilingual, we're able to very quickly switch between languages and really help a broad population. So what we're looking for is about 600,000 to expand our existing product portfolio, most of that going to headcount and a little bit to sales and marketing and other costs. So I'll stop there and open it up for questions.
All right, wonderful. Please feel free to speak up or, again, take advantage of that chat box. Great job, Sarah.
Thanks, Cody.
Questions for Sarah?
Perhaps I've stunned everyone.
All right, hey, there's one.
Okay.
From Diana Orego Moore. Do you partner with technology companies that manufacture the equipment used in manufacturing?
We do. We have a strategic partnership with Microsoft. And to the questions a gentleman asked a little bit earlier, we utilize the Azure platform as well as Microsoft Cognitive Services to allow for the training that we provide. One of the equipment companies that you see here, Henderson is one of the largest suppliers of automated sewn equipment. So we have a partnership with them. Gerber Technology is also a large manufacturer of equipment, and Coates is a thread company. And if we go back to this slide, these two affiliations are funded by the DoD, and they allow for projects of automated equipment providers to work with companies like mine on directed engineering projects. So that's another pipeline that's allowed us to meet a lot of machine equipment companies. I hope that answers your question. And I'll say too, if there isn't another question, machine companies don't want to build training. They want to build machines. So it's been a nice value proposition for us to really look at how we can supply those trainings and get them to the important business of what they're doing to make manufacturing cost competitive.
Excellent. Here come several questions. First from Taylor Ferris. What is your path and timing to exit?
So we don't really have any plans to exit anytime soon. We've been growing our user group in Asia. So we'll be tracked to have reached about 5,000 workers trained on our software by the end of this year. We feel like there are already a lot of interesting relationships we're building in the data lake that sits behind Shimmy Upskills. So we want to see that out and build that into a really nice asset that we would likely, it would be a really important piece of an exit at some point, but we still feel like there's work to be done.
And from Vikash Jha, what is the first 12-month plan once you have the funds?
So the first 12 months, the funding would come in. We've already been doing product and market fit with groups across the US who build industrial sewing trainings for workers. So we already understand the needs there. We already have a prioritized list of requirements, so we could start building this relatively quickly. And then we would move through that scaling roadmap that I talked about earlier to get to the 5,000 users by 2022.
Awesome. And from Sudarshan Narayan, who pays for the courses? And what is your revenue model?
So for this particular tool, Harold, we know that factories pay a recruitment cost to bring in new qualified workers. So we believe that we can capture those recruitment costs. We also know that factories want multi-skilled workers when folks are sick or there are gaps in a worker's timeline that creates bottlenecks. And we feel that there's value there. So we think there's an initial recruitment cost, and then beyond that, there's perpetual SaaS-based training that helps workers incrementally build their skills so they can be the flexible workforce that's needed. And then beyond that, there are costs for Shimmy to build training content for equipment providers as well.
Great. And from Monica Javons, does this technology have an opportunity to also ensure that the factory workers are protected with social codes of conduct, human rights, EHS policies, et cetera, so that training for workers is protected?
Yes, so one of our main partners in Bangladesh is the International Labor Organization, and lately our work has really been looking at how we can combine technical skills training with soft skills and mindset and compliance training as well. So we feel like Shimmy's value and our core competencies are around those technical skills, but we're very keen to partner and help digitize compliance and soft skill training as well.
Great. And from Constance Bowen, have you looked at meat processing or agro-processing applications?
You know,
it's
It's funny. So when I came to Northwest Arkansas, I gave a keynote at the Tech Summit there and had an amazing discussion with somebody at the end from Tyson, who was really interested in getting more workers to come into meat processing plants. And, you know, my team, particularly the game designers on my team, are incredibly creative, and if you can set them on something, the mind reels at what they might come up with in terms of a video game that tests aptitude in meat processing. So we feel like we have a nice core competency in apparel, but certainly if there is an opportunity for us to build something and help again to you know, bolster our manufacturing system in the US and help more people get jobs, we're very keen to help.
Fantastic. So maybe one last question from Billy Goldston. Have you or do you leverage state-funded apprenticeships to connect factories and workers?
The apprenticeship, you know, system and the incentive structure is really, really complicated. So what we do is we utilize a nationwide alliance we have with the Urban Manufacturing Alliance, and they hold a community of about 50 workforce boards all over the US who are focused on sewn trades manufacturing. So we really, instead of doing the, you know, Illinois workforce program and the New York workforce program, we can work through that alliance and scale much faster. So that has been the way we've gone about it so far.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks everybody. It was nice to spend a little time with you and wish you all well.